Minecraft is a wholesome fantasy game. There's no guns, and when players die, all they do is fall over and respawn. Despite this, the lore of the game near universally points to a darker place, like the thousands of trapped souls in this guy, the reproduction methods used in end cities, or the disabled villagers that players are rewarded for executing. Minecraft is an incredibly dark game, and nowhere is that clearer than the biome which literally has it in the name. The majority of this biome, and indeed this structure, are made up from skulk. Skulk itself is made up from the souls of living creatures, something you can observe if you kill mobs near a skulk catalyst, and so use these two facts together and you'll get something quite creepy. The warden spawns in a place where there are no mobs, and so will only realistically attack the player. They don't even attack other wardens if they run into them, and then also, when you die, all of your experience is converted into skulk. This tells you very clearly that you're not the first player to die around here, because this entire city is built from skulk and therefore the souls of other players. In fact, these other players are likely the explanation for all of these buildings across your Minecraft world, and it makes the world so much lonelier knowing you'll never be able to encounter them because they've long since been destroyed and converted into the souls of this area. If you think referring to this experience as souls is a bit dramatic, consider what happens when you put the soul speed enchantment on and then run on soul sand. Do you see this little soul icon that appears? It's also baked into the block itself. Well, now look at the warden himself and you can see that's literally what he enjoys eating. He destroys you, takes your soul, and then uses your experience to decorate this place to exactly his taste. And so you'll never encounter other players here. Just like how you'll never encounter a Minecraft video which doesn't remind you to subscribe somewhere in there, because 100% of people who aren't subscribed to the channel will die at some point in their lifetime. I wouldn't take that risk personally, but I also wouldn't take the risk of not considering what the villagers are doing to your brain. There's nothing left in Minecraft which is able to place blocks outside of maybe the Enderman, which is done entirely randomly. However, the closest thing that exists to humans in the game are the villagers. These are found in villages, and they have a happiness system which increases when you give them money and decreases when you hit them. Sounds a lot like humans to me. Anyway, the best way to get this happiness up is to trade with them repeatedly. You can hit them and they won't like it, but do some work for them and they'll be just okay. Minecraft forces players to make this decision that you're going to have to farm for villagers if you intend to hit them, and by doing so enforces a mini morality system into the game. In this morality system, it's okay to murder unproductive or baby villagers as long as you trade repeatedly with the people who replace them, and it's also just fine to force these guys into a physical death camp as long as you increase the number of trades you do. The morality system will be happy. In fact, it even encourages you to let your villagers get sick so they'll be grateful to you when they're revived. This seems pretty messed up, but it's actually a very clear and dark reference to capitalism. I mean, think about it. All you have to do to make everything okay is use enough money. Even when you do some atrocious tragedy, you can just pay off the fine, and it's totally great if you have enough emeralds. If you don't have the cash for that, however, you're literally going to be murdered for your crimes. This is something that is baked into every part of villager trading. The more money you have, the more okay everything is, and honestly, you could do just about everything as long as you give people their right money, which is very much how we see the capitalist system of the real world. Is that a problem? Well, I think what is a problem is piglins are the only other type of mob that can be traded with, if you can call this trading. I mean, imagine walking into a McDonald's, handing them over $5 and the cashier throwing a random food item at you and saying no refunds. If that sounds ideal to you, then you should start your own fast food franchise. But otherwise, you're stuck with the piglins and they're very frustrating trades. I just want some ender pearls, man. However, the zombie variant is even odder, because the only way you can get a zombified piglin is by having them go through a portal to the overworld. When piglins or hoglins are exposed to the overworld for long enough, they seem to turn straight into a zombified version of themselves. This is very odd though, because how do zombified piglins exist in the Nether? There is no overworld in the Nether. In fact, the only thing that kind of hints that there is even direct connections are these ruined portals, which are not just found in the overworld, but also in the Nether. This kind of hints these ruined portals must have been active at some point, and they must have wandered through them before wandering back in their purely zombified state. They are incredibly incredibly lazy, cannot be traded with, and can be relied on to do basically nothing unless you hit one of their friends, which implies they went through the overworld and wandered back through the portal. Maybe after seeing the horrors of capitalism, they became the stereotypical anti-capitalist. This also explains perfectly why they're willing to just take your armor and not give you anything for it, but the interesting question here is how are there so many of them in the Nether, but also, more importantly, where are the Zoglins? If these portals were open long enough that millions of piglins went through them and then managed to come back, how did hoglins, which are big enough to fit through a portal, not manage to ever go through there? Or maybe they went through there but they never came back. Where in the overworld are all of these Zoglins hiding? More importantly, since these seem to be undead mobs, the overworld turns any Nether mob into something that's undead, why are there skeletons found in the Nether, specifically in the one place filled with bones? What was the mob which went through the portal and came back as a skeleton? Or is it that the same skeletons have just managed to survive in the overworld and the Nether, and this is the one case of a mob which went through the portal and managed to live until you get there? It's impossible to be sure, but it is entirely possible to look at the third dimension. Shulkers are a mob found exclusively in the end cities, and unlike most mobs which reproduce by you, the player, giving them 2 sources of food and then letting them go into love mode with each other, they reproduce directly by shooting each other with their bullets. And so the question is, when you go to the end city, what are these shulkers trying to do to you? Okay, more seriously, what about the abandoned mineshafts found in mesa biomes? These are the only surface type of abandoned mineshafts that do exist, and they're specifically made from a different type of wood. Interestingly, it's a type of wood you wouldn't necessarily find in this biome or anywhere nearby, and so whoever built these things specifically was looking for a mesa biome to do so, because we know they came from another biome. In this case, the dark forest. So that means they came here specifically knowing about the gold that was found here. You can tell that even better by the fact that basically any lair these mineshafts are found are great lairs for gold, and so some ancient race of miner came here looking for gold, digging these shafts to come and find it. Nice. However, this doesn't explain why the sides of the structure are filled with all sorts of different ores, including gold. If they put all the effort in to make these 3x3 tunnels, specifically in the biome and area where they would find gold ore abundantly, why would they leave so much of it in the side? Is there something out there that went mining and specifically didn't want ores though? If it was, then why was it mining specifically in the mesa? What was it hoping to find there? And what used to be in these 3x3 tunnels that isn't there now? In fact, maybe we've gotten this entire thing backwards. Maybe it's possible that something they were doing and mining these 3x3 tunnels is what caused all of the gold to be in these specific abandoned mineshafts, because these abandoned mineshafts only spawn in the mesa biomes. Instead of them looking for gold, maybe they caused the gold. It's impossible to be sure. All I do know is that there's only one Nether mob which has definitely come to the overworld, and it is the one that distinctly likes the resource found in this biome. On the surface, Minecraft looks to be set in a fantasy world, one where the tech as far back as swords is still relevant, but also current tech like minecarts and TNT can exist in harmony. However, what if Minecraft takes place in multiple times? Not all at once, of course, but instead being different by dimension. If you look at the 3 dimensions, instead of being above, below, and in the middle of the other 2, instead as you see them as a time theory, you start to understand a lot better that, yeah, well, there could be a logical link between the only 3 structures which resemble player civilization. There are villagers in the overworld in the before times, in the earliest part of Minecraft, and these guys will do a lot of trading with you. They're some of the friendliest people that exist, but as times get darker, they become piglins. They'll do trading, but only in a grunt, give me my stuff basis, and their structures get much more defensive because the world around them gets much more hellish in the most literal sense. And then in the end state, there is only a few monsters left in the entire world. The world is basically barren bar a few cities where all of the resources have been collected. This is the late stage of the capitalist game where the only thing left are these boxes which vaguely contain humanoid life. Also, as there's only one plant type here, you can see how diversity really decreases over time. The end is the real end state of the world that can exist, whereas the overworld is the happy beginning where the highest variety of biomes, mobs, and flowers still exist. In fact, the only 3 mobs that can travel between dimensions are you, the player, Enderman as well as the Wandering Trader. Given the Enderman's building skills, I think it's very unlikely that they ever did a large amount of building, but maybe all of these questions about how this thing got built, including the massive portal in the ancient city, can simply be answered by the Wandering Trader is the person behind all of this. Many of the great things which have been built in Minecraft could be pinned on this guy, unless you chose to believe it was actually the Enderman from a long time ago, or maybe you choose to believe there are lots of players around the world which have been the cause for all of this. Let me know which of these three mobs you think is most likely to have caused everything, assuming that Minecraft is linear time, even assuming it's dimensions. Something has done things across all three dimensions, and who is it? There are three suspects. I'd love to hear your theories, but I'd also love if you subscribe to the channel, perhaps have notifications turned on to see more interesting videos like this one. I love to inform people about Minecraft, and although this was entirely theory crafting, the truth is, in Minecraft, you craft your own lore. None of this makes any sense, but also all of this does make sense and slowly affect the game in the same way that allies were theorized to be good versions of Vexes. They later actually changed them to make this into a reality. Just a reminder that if you make a big enough dent on the world, you will literally shift the version of reality that exists, and so if you think that your tiny differences don't matter, ultimately they do. They are shifting the entire human experience that we're living, and so I hope you enjoyed this video, because I'll see you in whatever you choose to watch next. Goodbye.